So, I supported my wife throughout the pandemic, but then she accused me of cheating, and get this, with our own daughter. To give you a bit of background, I'm 44. My wife Grace is 42. Fake names for obvious reasons. And we've been married for 13 years, together for 16. I met Grace right after I left the military because of a medical discharge. We met at the hospital where I was getting surgery. She was a nurse on the floor. At that time, she was a single mom, already divorced for a couple of years. After leaving the military, I went back to school, and now I work from home as a software engineer. Grace and I started dating but took it slow initially because of her daughter Maya, who was 5 then. Fast forward to now, Grace is still a nurse and Maya is in college. Up until last month, I thought our marriage was rock solid. Sure, we had our arguments, mainly because I sucked at housekeeping when we first moved in together. I wasn't used to kids being so, well, destructive. But overall, things were good. No major step-parent issues. I played an active role in Maya's life because her dad lives overseas for work. We went on dates, had great intimacy, and even wanted kids, though fate had other plans. Honestly, I was blindsided by Grace's accusation. I've seen friends blindsided by divorce and always thought there had to be obvious signs they ignored. But somehow, I'm now in the same boat, and maybe I missed something huge. Grace has been more stressed than usual, especially after COVID. She's been burned out, and I even suggested multiple times that she quit her job for a couple of years to recover. But she just got more withdrawn and angry, snapping at both Maya and me. Yet, I understood. She's my wife, and she was traumatized by the pandemic. We could manage just fine on my salary. Last month, I sat her down to suggest again that she take a break from work. That's when everything exploded. She started yelling, saying she knew I was cheating and had proof. I was floored and furious. I handed her my phone, opened my laptop, gave her access to everything. Discord, Slack, you name it. But she wouldn't even look. She just got angrier and threw my laptop. That's when I had enough and left for my parents' house. Grace kept texting and calling, leaving increasingly unhinged messages about this imaginary woman. When I got to my parents' place, I called Grace to say I needed a few days to cool down, but she kept reaching out to my sister to check if I was really there. After a few days, I called her back. Initially, the conversation was productive. She apologized for throwing the laptop, but then blamed me for being too calm. I explained I was furious, but tried to talk it out instead of shouting. She accused me again, claiming she had proof but wouldn't show it. She threatened to send everything to the lawyer, so I told her to send a copy to mine too, because we were getting nowhere. She got quiet and asked if I was serious. I told her I was. I couldn't stay in a marriage where my wife thought I cheated but wouldn't tell me why. We ended the call there, and I've been at my parents' house since. My dad sides with me. My mom thinks Grace is just having a rough time and we can work it out. My sister's pissed because she got dragged into this, and Maya is miserable being torn between us. I feel like maybe I overreacted and should have stayed calmer. Edit. My morning meetings are over, and I need to concentrate on work, so I'm logging out for the day. I'll talk to my mom to see if she can suggest therapy or couples counseling to Grace. I believe those who suggested there might be a deeper issue are right. It could be something I did, her stress, or even projection. I'll reassure Maya that she always has a place with me, no matter what. She's my daughter after all. Second edit. I took a quick break to read some comments. There are too many to address individually, but I'll tackle the main themes. 1. Someone asked if I was cheating. Let me be clear. No, I'm not cheating and never have. I love my wife and never wanted to cheat. Attraction to others happens, but cheating was never an option. 2. Many think Grace is cheating on me. I don't think so. She's home every night and doesn't hide her devices. Could there be someone at work? Maybe, but I doubt it. Famous last words, I know. 3. Talking about divorce and staying calm. I have PTSD and have worked through it in therapy. Staying calm is my way of coping, not because I am calm, but I get overwhelmed otherwise. The comment about my lawyer was a slip-up. I don't think divorcing after over a decade is the answer, but I need a safe mental space, so I'll stay at my parents' until this is resolved. 4. Could hormones be a factor? Possibly. Grace takes hormones because of a medical procedure in her early 30s. Having kids wasn't in the cards for us, and she usually sees her doctor regularly. So, it's been a few months since Grace had her levels checked, and her last appointment was in March. But her mood swings actually started before that. I believe she's dealing with some mental health issues, and it feels like she's been heading towards a burnout for a while now. I noticed her mood changes quite some time ago, which is why I suggested she consider taking some time off work. I brought it up again last month after she had a big blow up at me. I think all this is stress related, and it's been my reason for not contacting a lawyer yet. I really want to save our marriage. I was just looking for some reassurance from someone neutral because I'm totally out of my depth here. About not getting my mom involved, well, she already is. Grace and my mom are super close, and they talk every day. Grace doesn't have any contact with her own family, so I'm not really involving mom more than asking her to suggest marriage counseling next time they talk. I definitely don't want to drag anyone else into this, so no friends getting involved. I haven't been completely out of touch with my wife since I left. She messages me sometimes. It's the usual silly stuff like random memes or gossip about her coworkers. But other times, she's begging me to tell her the truth about something. This whole situation has me mentally exhausted, and I'm at my wit's end. I've already suggested therapy a few times, but she hasn't been receptive. Maybe if mom brings it up, it might help. Now, why am I using a throwaway account? Because my coworkers are on Reddit too, and I really don't want them to see this post. They might figure it out eventually, but I'm hoping software guy in his 40s with a wife in nursing is generic enough that they won't make the connection. No one at work knows about this, and I want to keep it that way. Please don't badmouth my wife. I'm upset because she's an amazing woman, smart, funny, sweet, and a great mom. That's why I've been so worried these past few months since this is so unlike her. To those asking for more info, yes, I'd love to know why she thinks I'm cheating, but she won't tell me. Is it because I'm on my computer too much? Or maybe I use my phone weirdly or take calls at odd hours. She won't say, and that's the worst part. If I knew, I could work on it. Maybe I'm not being affectionate enough or haven't planned enough dates, and she feels distant. But I don't know. And I want to know because I love my wife deeply. I've loved her since our second date, and by the end of the first month, I knew I wanted to marry her. This isn't about something trivial like not doing the dishes right, or her watching a show without me. She's accusing me of cheating and won't tell me why. I can't fix what I don't understand. If anyone could somehow get her side of the story, I'd really appreciate it. As for getting therapy, I'm all for it. I've done it on and off for years, but she refuses because she thinks it's pointless. I'll keep suggesting it, but I'm not holding out much hope. Maybe she'll agree to see her primary care physician, PCP, since she's been showing signs of burnout, depression, exhaustion, getting easily annoyed. I personally think it's all due to stress. Someone suggested that her accusations could be projection, a sign she might be cheating. But I really don't think that's the case. This is all so new and out of nowhere. It's why I'm struggling so much with the situation. None of it makes sense. Regarding strange text scams accusing me of cheating on her, that's something I hadn't considered. But I'll look into it. It might explain why she hasn't shown me any proof yet. Update 1, August 4th, 2024. I'm too exhausted to go back to ADA, so I'm just updating here quickly. No, my wife isn't cheating, sick, or showing signs of early dementia. If it were something like that, it'd be easier to handle. Maybe it's perimenopause or menopause, I don't know, and honestly, I don't care at this point. Yes, I'm seeking a divorce and have already talked to a lawyer. Right now, Maya and I are staying with my parents, but I'll be looking for a place to rent soon as I feel like I've overstayed my welcome. Maya is thinking about visiting her dad, and I can't blame her. I'm a mess right now. I logged back in just to clarify. My wife wasn't cheating. I almost wish she was. It'd be easier than this mess. Update 2, August 7th, 2024. I'm not sure if this is the right place to vent or get advice, but here goes. I've been married to Grace for 13 years, together for 16. When we first got together, she told me she had little to no contact with her family due to some obvious trauma. As someone with PTSD, I respected that. My family loved her, so I was happy to share mine with her. Right before I proposed, she told me more about her family. Grace came from a deeply fundamentalist Christian background, with lots of really messed up stuff going on. She got married at 16 to a family friend's son, who was 19. Luckily, he moved her away from her family so she could finish school and start college. They had their daughter Maya when Grace was 21. He went off to grad school in Europe, and they got divorced soon after. After the divorce, her family tried to marry her off to a much older man, which prompted her to finally leave. From what little she shared with me, it wasn't an easy escape. Violence was involved, and she suggested there was a sexual assault and an attempted kidnapping by the older man. However, she eventually managed to escape the situation, taking her daughter and moving in with a distant aunt. She cut off most of her family. A few years later, she met me, and our relationship progressed smoothly until this year. Over the past few months, my wife has become very irritable, exhibiting sudden bouts of anger and withdrawal. As she is a nurse, I initially thought she might be experiencing burnout due to the demanding work schedule and the trauma induced by the pandemic. She had been working for days at a time without any breaks. I suggested several times that she might need to take some time off to recuperate. The last time I made this suggestion, she exploded in anger, accusing me of infidelity. An intense argument ensued, during which she claimed she had proof of my cheating. When I asked to see this proof, she threw my laptop, and I left. We had another argument shortly thereafter over the phone. She threatened to send the proof of my infidelity to a lawyer, to which I responded that she could forward it to my attorney as well. Following this confrontation, our communication was mostly limited to texts, where she would send me updates from work or silly memes. Periodically, she would plead with me to confess to cheating, but I genuinely had no idea what she was referring to. For the past few weeks, I had been waiting anxiously to understand what proof she had. I had moved in with my parents, and the situation had been exceedingly stressful. It wasn't until a few days ago, when she came to my parents' house to talk, that she finally revealed the so-called proof. According to her, a coworker had informed her that she had seen me with a much younger woman. Upon asking follow-up questions about the appearance of this woman and other details, I quickly deduced that she was referring to Maya, our daughter, whom we often visit at the hospital for lunch. I assumed it was a simple misunderstanding. However, my wife knew that her coworker was describing Maya and was, in effect, accusing me of having an inappropriate relationship with the child I helped raise and who calls me dad. I tried to remain calm, aware of her trauma related to older men being involved with younger women, particularly given her parents' attempts to force her into such a relationship. Regardless, I felt profoundly disgusted and betrayed that she would even consider such an accusation. Our conversation devolved into another heated argument, during which she confessed that it wasn't just any coworker, but her first cousin, Shalia. Shalia is still actively involved in the church. It emerged that my wife had been spending time with Shalia, calling and talking to her frequently. Shalia was the one who had attempted to marry her off to an older man. My wife had been attending church meetings again, under the guise of being at work. While her religious involvement itself is not an issue, the contradictions in her statements were deeply troubling. She claimed that at 44, I was in my prime years for having children, an assertion I found absurd. She also labeled my father as evil due to his secular Jewish beliefs, and my mother as even more malevolent for abandoning her Christian faith, despite the fact that my mother has always been loving and supportive. The most distressing part was her insinuation that our daughter, a brilliant and amazing young woman who loves her mother dearly, was somehow to blame for allegedly flaunting herself. This convoluted and painful narrative spanned hours before I eventually asked her to leave. She accused me of being a poor provider, despite my repeated suggestions for her to take a break from work, which she twisted into evidence of my desire to isolate her from her family. She even suggested that my encouragement for her to seek therapy was an attempt to brainwash her into accepting my imaginary affair with Maya. I find myself utterly at a loss. Later that evening, after my wife had left, Maya called me in tears because her mother had been saying awful things to her. I invited Maya to stay with my parents and me, which only exacerbated the situation. My wife, Grace, now believes that Maya and I are living together. I have since contacted a lawyer, as I believe my marriage is irreparably damaged. I am overwhelmed by the intersection of religious fundamentalism and conspiracies, unsure where one ends and the other begins. I am at a loss as to how to repair or even understand the magnitude of how things have fallen apart. Update: August 11th, 2024. I saw my wife earlier today with the intention of discussing the logistics of our impending divorce. With over a decade of shared finances, a home, and intertwined lives, the separation process is complex. Maya's education is being funded by us, and our insurance coverage is tied to my wife's job. While lawyers will handle the legalities, I wanted my wife to understand the gravity of our situation. Divorce is not just a word, but a significant alteration of our lives. We are not old and can certainly move on, yet I have been her husband for so long that I scarcely know who I am without her. After returning home, I began drinking and have not stopped, which is undeniably foolish. I kept visualizing her sitting across from me, resolutely refusing to make eye contact. I realized that I no longer recognized the woman I married.